Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel and Video Game News. Today is Thursday, June 22nd. Normally I only stream on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, but I was sick yesterday. Also the Nintendo Direct happened, so maybe now I have a little bit more to say that I wouldn't possibly have had to say if I had streamed uh, on Wednesday. As far as being sick still, I feel good enough at the moment to try this, but at any point I might have to jump out. Plus, there's other emergencies, minor emergencies, that might call me away. I might get a phone call, and then that may just be the end of the stream type situation. Also, I may just not really be able to make it. And see, that puts you in this weird position, certainly, where I could have either just left everything for Friday, and then it would have been a really long stream on Friday. I could have reran my macro for Thursday and had a little bit more news to talk about, because I actually did run the macro on Wednesday. But I think it's probably best to just keep everything in the middle. We may not play much Yu-Gi-Oh! We're just playing everything by ear here today. We probably should jump into the news pretty quickly, as it is. I didn't directly watch the Nintendo Direct, but there's certainly news talking about it. And I either have to straight up say I don't understand what Nintendo is thinking, or I have to be very, very jaded because they announced a remaster of Super Mario RPG, which is something I've said in the past I would have suspected they would have never made a remaster or re-release of, because my feelings on it was that they really didn't like the people in charge of making Super Mario RPG that they had hired, and that they had just maybe with the new president of Nintendo of Japan, that the animosity has gone away, and the grudge holding has gone away. I also wouldn't be surprised if they didn't actually have any of the code, any of the source code for Super Mario RPG. But really, at this point, you don't particularly need the source code. It's nice to have it, and you could probably decompile something anyways and then work from a decompiled binary to remake Super Mario RPG. But at a certain level, I wonder if you could just, for a Super NES game, program a custom version of an emulator that would have already run Super Mario RPG perfectly fine, and in that emulator change the graphics, change the audio. There is kind of a massive amount of Mario stuff that was announced, like just Mario and Mario adjacent stuff announced like crazy for Nintendo Direct that was being sold as like a 20-minute presentation of Pikmin 4, which they've kind of forgotten completely about Pikmin at this point. And there is also, I guess, some jadedness that can happen there, as far as maybe this is them rushing out games to make up for poor and declining receptions of Pokemon games and poor and declining receptions of Switch games overall, as there is expectation that a Switch 2 is going to come out. If they are rushing to put out the last few games that were designed, or at least in a decent way close to being designed for the Switch, that's more of an indication that whatever the next console that comes out may not be backward compatible, or may just be such a step forward towards modern gaming that something like Mario RPG wouldn't make sense as a launch title for the next console. Notably, though, since this is a remaster, it also just confuses on the issue of what Nintendo is really trying to do. Are they trying to make cheap, low-effort ports of their games, or are they trying to remaster games? Because there has not really been a remaster in the Mario series so far. The ports and rebundling of the old Mario games, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy 1 and 2, I believe, those were just ports. Those weren't remasters. And even like Super Mario 64, I don't think it is actually a remaster. There has been, I guess, technically a remaster, but really it's been a port for Skyward Sword, the Metroid Prime trilogy. I think that falls under the category of being a real remaster. But it does definitely seem like this would be the beginning of something very different. I think I'm probably supposed to do something better with that card. Because I was sick, I also didn't play any of this off screen, which I could have done if I felt better. Being sick like this in particular really sucks because, like, very often my back hurts. Very often I want to sleep, but I can't sleep. I need to sleep. So it's not really in a good position to do anything. I watched all of Nosferatu on Hulu before it expired on Wednesday, which is one of Stephen King's sons, Joe Hill's book. And I would say it's very similar to a lot of Stephen King's books, particularly in the fact that a lot of those are just not as well thought out when converted to TV. Like, the books themselves probably a little bit better. But I would say the second season of Nosferatu, and it being a TV series probably wanting a third season the way it ended, is a bit of a problem, where I bet the book wraps things up a little bit nicer. But that's practically all I even watched, was just two whole seasons, which took up a ton of time, certainly, on Hulu. And yeah, that's practically all I've accomplished, other than frustrating myself on putting even more time into Marvel Snap and playing Star Trek Lower Decks, and my favorite mobile game, Destiny Child, has a new update, so there's now a new campaign to focus on that today. I could definitely see a situation, since Lower Decks as a mobile game is just this do 2 actions and then exit and then come back 2 hours later when you have another trade offer. Like, I could see that getting really boring, and particularly if they either Lower Decks is a newer game than I think it is, or they're just not adding enough content fast enough. So I do think I could easily see just accomplishing everything there is to accomplish in Lower Decks. Either that, or it becomes like the Goblin mining game, where the numbers just keep going up and up and up exponentially, and it just takes longer and longer. Before I finally gave up on the Goblin mining game, I was very close to like the end of everything, but it was so long. It was going to be entire days in which you really didn't even need to log in. just waiting. And Lower Decks has that same problem where in the goblin mining game you have goblins mining on rocks. In Lower Decks you have kind of insignificant characters just standing around while dials load and spin up to give you merit points, and then you use the merit points to upgrade different holodeck simulations to get more merit points. And that's really the uninteresting part of Lower Decks. If you could mod Lower Decks out so you just saw the cutscenes of the narrative, or made an extremely abridged version of the game where you got through each of the scenarios very quickly, that's where the entertainment is from. So ideally, I think Lower Decks would probably be better if it was just a visual novel, because that's the good content there, is the cutscenes in between certain milestones of the time-wasting gameplay mechanic. I changed my programming a little bit, so I'm hoping the auto blow will turn on only when necessary. It does heavily require, though, for those interstitial pages to load, and that is probably going to mean that I need to eventually improve my macros code to make sure things actually work instead of just failing and having no like error catching options. But we do have this story from Video Games Chronicle that Sony apparently has said that it will withhold PlayStation 6 details from Activision if it's acquired by Microsoft. The company says it would be unable to share sensitive information with the Call of Duty maker. Okay. Like, so often you get these headlines like it's supposed to be some big reaction, or they're trying to get some big reaction out of you as the reader, and as a gamer I'm like, alright, fine, so what? Every company probably should be either sharing their stuff as open source, or they're going down the route of proprietary and keeping everything secret. The fact that they are picking and choosing who they're sharing with is the mushy middle that I think I would least like. What it really comes down to, though, is I think Jim Ryan showing their hand and saying, wait, we're going to actively do something here and admit we're going to do something that people will say is the reason that the next Call of Duty doesn't run as well on the PlayStation 6. So that they've signed their own death certificate effectively, because now it is definitely going to be in the back of the minds of Call of Duty fans to say, well, don't buy Call of Duty on the PlayStation 6 because Sony has literally said that they're going to withhold some of those secret CPU processes and codes and design specifications. So there's no way that Activision would be able to optimize Call of Duty as well to run on the PlayStation 6. Meanwhile, on the other hand, Sony is looking at it from a perspective that, well, maybe Microsoft would steal design concepts from Sony and use that as a way of making a better next generation Xbox that could outcompete performance-wise. Which, inherently, Sony has never succeeded well by having more technical success as far as a console maker. You have the PlayStation 3 as a great example of just going in a crazy direction that maybe they thought could be used to make games a lot better, but in reality was just so weird that any second party or third party developer couldn't make games better on the platform. And yeah, I guess if we go back to PlayStation 1 or PlayStation 2, yes, those were better than Nintendo consoles, but Microsoft has way more sensitive information shared with it from other CPU and gaming PC manufacturers than Sony does. Sony has basically nobody sharing that information with them. And Microsoft just has way more experience on what CPU and PC gaming is like. And since that is the direction that the Xbox at least will always go, they are always going to go in that direction. The one thing Sony might have had that could have been really helpful is if they came out with a new disc standard, Sony in general, some 8K Blu-ray type disc, which probably at this point would be multiple discs on a cartridge, if not a write once flash memory thing. But yeah, hardware wise, there's nothing that the PlayStation 5 has that the Xbox 360 the Xbox Series X wants. And so this really is just a great example of Jim Ryan shooting himself in the foot when he should have just said nothing. I guess this was a disposition in front of the FTC, so maybe he was required to answer honestly and truthfully. So I guess I can cut him some slack if he's actually attempting to work with the FTC to shut down the Activision Blizzard merger. But yeah, it definitely doesn't look good for Sony or Jim Ryan to make the claims that they are going to take any steps whatsoever that could be used as or seen as a step that would hurt Activision's chances of making Call of Duty the best running and performing game it can be on the PlayStation 6. Meanwhile, you're worrying about hardware as the PlayStation when PlayStation has very much been all about its first party and second party titles and the software. Like, when people think PlayStation, they think Uncharted, Last of Us, things like that. They don't think of the weird, artistic, ugly PlayStation 5 device, or they don't think of the hardware inside the PlayStation's white plastic shell. At least I don't think of that. It is kind of a trick out of Microsoft's playbook to have secret code, undocumented code in Windows as far as an operating system. And have the Windows operating system using undocumented code as a way of having Windows software run in different ways, if not better ways. That's effectively what Sony is claiming they would do. We are very much in a new era as far as video game news, in which I think everybody, whether it's Jim Ryan of Sony or Matt Booty or Larry Hibbard, Major Nelson, They need to realize that every time they speak, they are being heard, and they are speaking to gamers, the end user, no matter what. Where gamers in particular are way more involved than in every level of development and production of the products, and we listen way more. So they need to always approach it from that aspect and think to themselves, is this statement going to look good, or how is it going to be received by the end user, by the gamers? I think the current conflict and escalation of the Reddit situation is also a great example of that too, in that now they have kicked out several mods of several subreddits, or at least fewer mods for several subreddits. The problem, though, is that at least in the argument to leave Twitch, I'm hearing a little bit of chatter around Kick, where the argument to leave Reddit and the actual people who are engaging with Reddit are mostly the mods. Anyways, so there's no clear place to go if you wanted to follow the mods, which is a big if, depending on which of the mods you actually liked and which subreddits you actually liked. And there's no website particularly that matches what Reddit does. So yeah, that's a problem. Inherently, it would make a lot of sense for the developers of the third-party apps to get together, form a consortium, and say, we're going to redo the back end of Reddit, and we're going to replace it. We're going to make a new website. It's going to be very similar to Reddit, work on the similar aspects. And yes, we'll have to run ads and charge or charge fees for these apps, and we'll run ads actually on Reddit posts. I guess I should just activate this trap so I can stop getting prompted. Yeah, I guess that would be the smartest way to go about it. It's just replace Reddit. And there is an interesting argument I heard around how Reddit is a private company, and so there's basically no shareholders who would possibly vote out the CEO of Reddit, whereas Twitter was a public company before it was bought out by Elon Musk, that I think took it effectively private, even though there are shareholders still at Twitter, and that didn't help either, which I think that kind of argument probably just shows that a public company or a private company doesn't matter at all. There's really no protection for end users or the people's will in either system. The government is supposed to be the system that protects people's will, and it would be very hard for the United States government to come into Twitter or Reddit and say, this is actually a public forum, you've made this a public forum, therefore we're going to publicize it, is the phrase, and turn it into a public utility. Which that's really what the government should be doing on both cases. They should be both considered public utilities, public forums. They both should be taken over and acquired by the government. There is constitutional things of unlawful taking, so you'd have to actually pay for Twitter and Reddit, but that doesn't mean you have to pay exactly what they demand either. Yeah, particularly public ownings of websites would be a pretty new thing as a concept. Although certainly they have done it in different ways. Eminent domain, same kind of concept. Although I did hear an interesting story about a PBS station that just launched that has no over-the-air broadcast at all. Instead, it is streaming online and is then giving away its signal, I think probably for a pittance to cable subscribers and satellite subscribers. Although in that case, the reason why they're not broadcasting over the air is because it's in an extremely mountainous area that would probably cost tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars to put up broadcast equipment, or re-put up broadcast equipment. It was there once before, just to reach 5 or 6 people. Yeah, there really is no reason to protect broadcast TV, particularly when you see where they're pushing and where they're going with the third version of the digital over-the-air broadcast signals, in which they're trying to put increasing DRM and just make it so that they can charge and screw over the poorest of people, certainly. Or people at least that don't want to waste money with cable or satellite subscriptions. Anyways, I'm supposed to be talking about video games, and I really don't have time to be that distracted today. Apparently, a Quake 2 remastered has been rated in Korea, so there is speculation here that QuakeCon 2023 announcement might happen. Which, I guess the question asked there is, has there been a Quake 1 remastered? Back in 2021, there was a rated version, a remastered version of Quake 1. Quake, not really a game I ever played, so I'm not really super up to date on following it. Okay, that's not working. It does seem like it just wildly varies based on what time you're playing, whether or not you're going to win or not. There's already, a day later, also some fan pushback and concerns around the Nintendo Direct, so it really failed horribly, even though a lot was announced, to address everything that I guess needed to be addressed, or to get people hyped enough that they wouldn't start thinking other things. So apparently, according to Video Games Chronicles, fans are debating if this new game, Mario Wonder, that they announced has recast Charles Martinet. Some believe characters' voices sound different in new games Wonder and WarioWare Move It, which I guess this at this point is just speculation, and we'll come back with concrete information later, I guess. Let's see. Here we have a YouTube creator's tweet, which is probably a mistake. I don't know who this Happy Kelly is, but 100% of the time, anytime YouTube has been involved with a child content creator, it has looked bad on YouTube. So incredibly stupid to pick her, even if she's like super popular, you have it on both problems, because you have every child creator is often seen or downright proven to be abused or manipulated by some stage mom, stage dad, or just lazy parents trying to use their kids to make money. And this is all stuff that Hollywood eventually learned too. When's the last time you saw a TV show that really even tried to have a young kid character? Even Nickelodeon has long since tried to move towards the tween and teenager ages at the earliest. But yeah, there are no like Child Actors Screen Actors Guild protections for any content creator on YouTube, which maybe there should be. There's no limitations on hours and the type of work and the type of dangerous work they can't do. But then you also have viewers, some percentage, you don't have to really know the percentage, but you know some percentage of the people who are commenting and watching children on YouTube are doing it from a very perverted, lewd perspective, and that has been used against YouTube multiple times, though really that may be the case with any kind of content like that. But yeah, it just never really benefits YouTube to do this, and they've been really good at, I think, over the years of not doing that. There's got to be other people for VidCon or other ways you can promote VidCon instead. Meanwhile, YouTube creators is mostly trying to push everybody into selling affiliate links towards products and shopping. That's their new big thing, but it does seem like their new big things also are going to only last for as little as a couple of weeks before they get interested in something else. Maybe they are just adopting more of a rapid development strategy in which they're going to develop things, throw them out there, and then just let them stay. Of course, it's more Google's habit to develop something, throw it out there, not support it, then shut it down after a few years, which that could be an absolute nightmare scenario if you have all these shopping videos flooding YouTube, ruining what YouTube really is as far as the quality of the content, and then the affiliate link aspect of it gets shut down, and then there's just all these videos that have potentially hundreds of thousands of views that are manipulating the algorithm in the wrong direction. This is absolutely the worst card to have activated because I should have used it on an enemy, not myself. The next Video Games Chronicle article we have is that Super Mario RPG's original composer is returning for the remake. We have arranged all the music with all of our hearts, says Yoko Shimomura. Which, again, I feel like I have this need to come off of this either super hyped or cynical, and the cynical part of my mind would say maybe this is an indication that that's the only people coming back. I heavily would suspect it is just bringing back a music composer. And yeah, I don't know if the music really needed to be remastered or remade. See, I definitely am coming from it from the perspective that Super Mario RPG feels like it is going to probably be a beat for beat, action for action remake of the original game, and that nothing in the story will change. There won't be new attacks, there won't be new items, there won't be new characters, there won't be new dialogue. It really doesn't feel like it would be something like Final Fantasy VII Remake where everything is just completely different. Maybe there is a slight tweak that could happen there that would bring Super Mario RPG more in line with the rest of the Super Mario universe, so that it wasn't this just odd man out. Particularly since you have Mario vs. Raving Rabbids, that universe has expanded as far as spin-off games that really aren't anywhere close to canon. But yeah, on one hand, if they did change everything, if they added twice as much grind to Mario RPG, if they added new items, new characters, and new enemies, and new dialogue, and it just went in a completely different direction, I'm not sure I'd like that either. If anything, I want an abridged experience from Super Mario RPG. The number one thing I remember from when I played Super Mario RPG is that it had kind of a groundbreaking timing mechanism where Mario would jump, and when he was about to land on the head of an enemy, you could press A and continue the jump and do more damage each time. And he would get faster and faster until you finally failed. Which allowed Mario to potentially do a lot of damage and slightly speed up battles, but not by much. I remember a lot of grinding in Super Mario RPG, and personally I would kind of like to see most of that go away. They do establish a interesting precedent now that if they remake Super Mario RPG, then that sort of commits them to remaking some of the Paper Mario games too, and it sort of just puts them down the same path of remaking everything that would make any sense to remake at all. But yeah, if anything, it feels like at least one of these announced games should have been announced and released around the Super Mario movie. Another cynical thing you could potentially take from this is Miyamoto is old. Like, maybe this is his way of either being forced into retirement or into experimenting to see who's going to replace him by having multiple teams work on multiple Mario games. Of course, it could also be higher ups at Nintendo saying, nope, you've got to oversee these last 6 Mario games before you retire. Yeah, it's way too many games to be announced to expect Miyamoto to really have any real focus on any of them. He may focus on one. It probably won't be a remake. It'll probably be one of the new games. I have no idea what I'm doing. I really should just stop playing at this point. Like, my mind is completely blank as to what I'm doing here on Yu-Gi-Oh! I don't think I'm getting anywhere. I'm just playing cards just because I can play them. I'm getting nowhere with it. I definitely am not in the mood or the mental state to engage with it. So, Gamatsu has like all the Nintendo Direct announcements and headlines in a row, so we can just go through it real quick. A Super Mario Bros. Wonder has been announced for Switch, which is a 4-player, 2.5D side-scrolling Super Mario Bros. Type game. The difference being you're collecting Wonder Shrooms or Wonder Stars. Mario can turn into a into an elephant. You know, you can see it back here. It could be good, it could be bad. It really just depends on how well it runs. If it's anything like New Super Mario Bros. U, though, that control scheme was very rough, and I eventually just abandoned that game. I didn't even make it past the first world. It was just so difficult to play, which arguably maybe Mario games used to be really difficult to play, but heck, this is modern times. Mario games should be super easy to play. A WarioWare game called WarioWare Move It, which obviously is going to have a lot to do with shaking the Joy-Cons, is being released. This might be an indication that the Joy-Cons are not coming to whatever the next Nintendo console is, which I could believe that, really. There's not been any second party or third party adoption of the Joy-Cons, really, and they have caused more trouble than they were worth, and they really didn't groundbreak in any way. I bet third party developers would be super happy if the next Nintendo console has a controller that looks a lot like an Xbox and PlayStation controller. And if anything, I probably would look like a PlayStation controller to compete in Japan. Star Ocean, the second story R, has been announced for the PS4 and 5, the Switch, and PC. Here, my renamer plugin is shortening that. Otherwise, it would have said PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5. A Kinect 3D platformer called Penny's Big Breakaway was announced for the... Well, nope, I guess that was the end of those announcements. Because, well, maybe these all were talked about. A 3D platformer for a new game, a Fate Samurai Remnant coming to Japan for the Switch. Momotaro Dentetsu, almost certainly a Japanese exclusive. Oh my goodness, did I start another game? I mindlessly, like as mindlessly as I'm playing, I mindlessly started another game. I mean, I might as well just concede. Let's just surrender. Yeah. I don't do this usually, but... I just stupidly clicked Duel again. And yeah, you can tell I'm just not mentally here. So as far as the festival, I need to play 9 more things, and I need to synchro summon 23 more things, which that's not happening. I probably had some extra daily quests. Notice this is Fusion Pendulum and Link Summon, not Synchro Summon. But yeah, we can get most of those daily quests done. We can get back to where we were. Vampire Survivors coming to the Switch. A Pikmin 1+2 is available for the Switch. I guess I could buy that for myself and be fairly happy on that. I am in a weird position at the moment where all I have is Pokemon Snap and I don't really have a lot of motivation to play Pokemon Snap. But yeah, I could see playing Pikmin 1 and 2, and then I guess Pikmin 3 is already out. And then a Pikmin 4 demo launches June 28th. A Dragon Quest Monsters The Dark Prince was announced. A Silent Hope, a game, isometric RPG called Silent Hope. Gloomhaven. See, I don't know if this is specifically just announcements though for the Nintendo Direct, or if this is just all the announcements, because it looks to me like it's all the announcements. The Batman Arkham Trilogy was announced, and I wanted to mention that. So that's once again them deciding to leave out one of the better Batman games that wasn't made by their company, while including Arkham Knight, or the last Batman game, which was particularly bad. Although, yeah, I don't think that was called Arkham Knights. Arkham Knights is its own thing, and it's bad too, but it's not even being included. A co-op action game called Maniac Mechanics for the Switch. A Gloomhaven coming to the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series, and Switch on September 18th. Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon Remastered has been announced for the Switch. I wanted to look at that. And then a Princess Peach game has been announced as its own side thing. Super Mario RPG announced. You should look at that. The biggest problem, certainly with Super Mario RPG, is that you have regular Mario, regular Princess Peach, and regular Bowser. Then you have this Pinocchio-like puppet character that I couldn't even tell you the name of, and this cloud character that I couldn't tell you the name of. And they play big roles. In fact, I think there's even one other character that plays a big role. I do think maybe, just maybe, that Super Mario RPG may be one of these games where if you jump on the character and land on the mushroom's head, you'll do instant damage at the beginning. I don't know if I've ever seen one though where you could just jump on a character and be so overpowered that that instant first hit would kill it and you wouldn't even jump into the secondary fight mechanic screen. Which the secondary fight mechanic screens in RPGs are the things that are rather annoying. Some of these screenshots do imply you'll see new cutscenes, but a lot of this does pretty much feel like it is just the same game. Here's the secondary fight screen. We have a Mallow, it's the name of the Marshmallow character in Geno. In a lot of ways, these are, if you'd taken out the Nintendo stuff, this almost certainly could have been a Final Fantasy game, and probably was a Final Fantasy game in development originally. There's this percentage here, and I don't know what that is about. This might be some kind of limit break or something as a new feature, where the fire flowers were your magic points effectively, and you would have health points. So a shared pool of magic points. Let's see. In a lot of ways though, you definitely could see this just being run on an emulator for the most part, playing the original code of the original game with nothing really changing. And you do fight so many characters, like I don't recognize either one of these characters, and in fairness I didn't even remember fighting, say, this Donkey Kong character or seeing this character. So maybe they are adding some new characters, or maybe it's just such a long game it's hard to tell. Weirdly, Luigi not playing as big of a role as you could see. I definitely remember this sequence, and most people probably would remember this sequence because Mario has to hide behind these curtains, and they speed up and all open the curtains at the same time so you have to move back and forth, and you'll almost certainly fail in the first couple of attempts. I definitely remember this was probably the most frustrating point as far as non-combat. There is something I think that needs to be pointed out here, though, that needs to be applauded, in that, at the very least, compared to the Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 remakes, where you have these chibi, pixely remakes coming out that are extremely low effort, this 3D modeling is smooth and polished. It is still a chibi doll-like height for these characters, although weirdly Bowser and Princess Peach are not really chibi, although maybe Bowser is chibi because Bowser really should be a lot bigger. His size seems to grow and shrink based on need. But yeah, it is a little weird to have Mario so much shorter than Princess Peach, it looks, in this screenshot. But the visuals definitely do visually look better. Speaking of child abuse, I suppose GameDeveloper.com had an article that says a report implicates Discord in a string of child abductions and exploitation. Somewhat believable, yeah, since anybody anywhere in the world is given the freedom to make a Discord, it totally makes sense that some amount of crimes are going to happen there versus a completely censored or at least monitored form of communication would exist. This is one of these articles, though, that is inherently just trying to push the idea of pro-censorship and using the what about the children, think of the children argument. Like, you don't have to read any further than the headline to say, to know that they're going to push the idea here, push some propaganda that Discord should become a more monitored, censored service, and that censorship should happen, when in reality the truth is Discord's fine doing whatever it's doing now, because the police can do their thing and obviously have done their thing to capture and potentially rescue children, whereas if Discord was just censoring that conversation, it would just go into some other dark web or deep web website or service. Inherently, if Discord had end-to-end encryption on all of its communication, you couldn't have a report like this, but also Discord wouldn't work that way since it is more public postings. But yeah, the police should go after people actually committing crimes, and media and other people should not be pushing for self-censorship or censorship on any place, because they're going to say, think about the children now, but it's definitely going to be this slippery slope, at which point they're going to say, well, there's also right-wing Nazis on Discord, which almost certainly there is a small percentage of Nazis on Discord. Yeah, every new service, literally, every new service gets attacked by some mainstream news site, just as being something that is evil, just because I'm sure GameDeveloper.com does not have the most active Discord, and they don't want to have an active Discord. Inherently, you don't need to go to GameDeveloper.com if there was an active Discord to replace it, which there probably is. I don't know what it is, but yeah. Yeah. Drug deals sometimes happen on playgrounds. That doesn't mean we should get rid of playgrounds or parks. Like, it's the same old argument that's been made millions of times over, and it's always just this guilt by association. Blame the vast majority of innocent people based on the bad actions of a small percentage. It's hardly the case that Discord is advertising towards abusers. They really aren't. It's just not the case. If anything, Discord's not advertising enough to anybody, so we'll leave it at that. Well, if it wants to load, we have a Silent Hill cosplay. Although, arguably, when you're doing a cosplay of Maria from Silent Hill, a character I'm not super familiar with, it doesn't look like you're doing too much as far as the cosplay goes. Seems like a very generic choker necklace, a generic top, maybe this looks like a fake tattoo, belly button ring, and skirt. Like, it's hardly the crazy high fashion you see when you're looking at somebody cosplaying something from like Warhammer or from a JRPG. And generally, since I'm not familiar with the character, I can say, alright, this hair looks good and the makeup looks good. I don't know if it's accurate, but it doesn't look terrible. Perhaps you try for a better contrast, particularly if you're going to post it online, because this does look pretty blurry on these edges here, fading into the black background. Yeah, I don't know if this wasn't actually just cropped out and then a black background was added later, but I don't know if in general you should have a black background at all for an image. This puts me in an interesting quandary. Apparently, according to Gamatsu, Xbox Series X and Game Pass prices are going to increase. The Series S and PC Game Pass is going to remain unchanged. So, that's an interesting situation. Of course, it's important to point out that the prices are going up outside of the United States, Japan, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia, which arguably maybe the prices have already gone up a little bit in Chile, Brazil, and Colombia, and inflation may have hit the United States and Japan too. So this is one of those headlines that looks like the price is going to go up when it really isn't for people in the United States or Japan or those other countries. Yeah. And until I had scrolled down and read that, I honestly was thinking, well, is this the time to just seeing this headline, it does make me consider, should I buy an Xbox Series X just as a 4K Blu-ray UHD player? Like that's a really expensive investment, but it's not that much more expensive than just buying a standalone 4K UHD Blu-ray player. Or should I just draw a line and say, no, I'm not going to, don't bother doing that. Just don't get to Series X at all and roll the dice on the next console. But then now I've scrolled down and realized that this was actually more just clickbait of a headline from Gamatsu than anything, which is interesting because Gamatsu's not really known for doing misleading headlines. It really feels like this should be Xbox Series X and game prices to increase in some or areas or outside the United States, US, Japan, Chile, Brazil, and Colombia. Yeah, the Batman Arkham trilogy is Batman Arkham Asylum, Batman Arkham City, and Batman Arkham Knight, which means the other Batman Arkham game which I can't remember the name. It's Arkham City something else. Some other subtitle is being excluded once again. It feels like it's worthwhile to point that out, that game is being excluded once again. This is for the Switch. I can't imagine Arkham Knight really is going to play that well as a port for the Switch. It didn't play that well even on really strong PCs, so you're setting yourself up for frustration. And overall, I think the Arkham trilogy is potentially a trilogy to skip because it doesn't really do much for you. As somebody who's played Arkham Asylum and still thinks that's somewhat good, but then played Arkham City and thought that was getting mid, and knows that Arkham Knight is going to be bad, it's diminishing returns with each sequel. I'd like a reboot of the Arkham Asylum series as a concept with a different beat-em-up gameplay mechanic. The other thing to take from this is Warner Brothers seems to be double dipping instead of focusing in on new products, when they really should be focusing in on what's the next Batman game that you're going to they're going to make, or what's the next Warner Brothers thing they're going to make. VidCon 2023 is being sponsored by YouTube. It seems like YouTube YouTube is excited to return as the title sponsor and exclusive live stream sponsor of VidCon Anaheim 2023, which is to say they didn't even act as a sponsor when VidCon literally is just YouTubers. You can see though that they are definitely focusing on shopping, and then I think they're paying lip service to gaming communities, but maybe they will actually do something, but then they're back to shopping. Several speeches scheduled for different rooms for different times if you were to actually go to VidCon, but honestly I think you're probably pretty disconnected if you think you need to go to VidCon or that there's anything important that's going to be said there. Speaking of YouTube, somebody got their YouTube channel deleted because they seemingly dared to have the hubris to disagree with both YouTube's automated scan detections and then their human detections. The story, as I heard it from Sid Alpha, he can explain it better. Somebody was playing a 8-bit Fortnite clone that's apparently very popular. I can't even remember the name, but it does look like it might become very popular. In his video, a different character was bobbing his head up and down, shaking it up and down, I guess potentially making it look like this 8-bit character was simulating a sex act. So that got automatically detected, even though it seems like it wasn't the content creator that was actually making the actions, bobbing the head back and forth, and it got limited ads. So then he disputed the limited ads, and in what can only be really described as hubris for YouTube, the humans that then looked and reviewed it escalated the limited ads to removing the video, and although saying that while you're in good standing, we won't give you a guideline strike. So it went from limited ads to removing the video. So he then disputed this new action, and then in even more sheer hubris, the humans deleted his whole channel. Yeah. So these are the kind of idiots. I mean, what else can you call them? These are the kind of ego driven maniacs that seem to be in charge of YouTube, when the rules should be followed a lot better than that, as far as not escalating things just because somebody dares to disagree with them. It would have been fine if he had contested the limited ads and they had said, we have verified it. That's what almost every content creator gets, is they get a instant automated response that says, we have confirmed that a human has looked at it, and you know that a human really hasn't looked at it. And I guess inherently that is the problem, is that we also know that wherever these reviewers are, probably in India, probably don't speak English, probably are given like 5 seconds to look at an hour's worth of footage. We know that they're just clicking yes, and they're just saying, yeah, we were right. But yeah, this is a new escalation on just how broken the content moderation system is on YouTube, that you potentially don't dare now even challenge YouTube's algorithm for fear they would delete your entire channel. That's really insane. And yeah, it goes back to the idea of maybe you don't want moderation in most things. Maybe YouTube completely unmoderated would be a better service. And definitely with Discord, where you're allowing people to create their own Discords and do their own moderation, I think that works potentially better. Moving on, a Detective Pikachu Returns was announced, which I have to feel like they are going to try really hard to hope everybody forgot about the live action Detective Pikachu movie, because clearly they don't want to go in that direction again. Like, the 3D CGI of those Pokemon was really, really off-putting and weird, and just not falling in line with what a Pokemon movie has been for decades now. So yeah, and honestly, I think that Detective Pikachu movie probably was telling a very different tale from what the original Detective Pikachu game was telling, which I think that came out to the West. You can see there's a Mewtwo in the background, and then you have some newer style of Pokemon than what would have probably been in the original Detective Pikachu, and then potentially newer human characters as maybe sidekicks to Detective Pikachu. That being said, I don't know if you can have that much hope around anything made by Game Freak or any Pokemon at all. Pokemon game. These are Pokemon. So, yeah. Really don't even know what the original Detective Pikachu game would have been about. I assume it was solving a mystery, but it might have been solving multiple mysteries. And they could have been cutesy little simple mysteries. Or they could be complicated murder mysteries. New screenshots, while cute, showing off Detective Pikachu in the Sherlock Holmes Deerstalker hat, I believe is what they're called. It's not really giving me any description as to what the game actually would be. And I dare not push play on any of these trailers from Nintendo. It'll all get content ID. I wouldn't be surprised if I get some kind of claim just from screenshots. Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says the FTC uses Starfield to fuel the block against the Microsoft Activision merger. In the FTC's eyes, Microsoft's past handling of big exclusives provides a roadmap to its future plans. There was also a email that was sent from Matt Booty to another employee inside of Microsoft that they have gotten their hands on. That happened before ZeniMax was acquired. But it definitely is an email that seems to imply, at the time at least, Matt Booty's decision was to, or his intention was to ice out Sony with exclusives from ZeniMax and other companies. I wonder on a lot of this. All of this is really just speculation, and we've talked too much about it, and we've had too much news about it already. But I wonder if a lot of this isn't already decided. Like Microsoft really knows they're already going to get approved from it, or Microsoft already knows that they're not going to get approved from it, so they're just going through the motions for some other reason. Yeah. At the end of the day, though, it's wasting potentially more people's time as far as players thinking about the FTC blocking Microsoft Activision merger than it might be wasting Microsoft and Activision's time. Like that, they very possibly have just agreed on something and then handed it to the lawyers and then never thought about it again, really. Here we have GameDeveloper.com, I believe. Yeah. It says a softer Nintendo Direct may signal an imminent Switch successor, which, I mean, you literally could have written that headline before the Nintendo Direct even happened. The subheadline: Nintendo had plenty of reasons not to show off its biggest games in this summer's Nintendo Direct. I don't know, though, where you get the idea that this was a soft announcement. There's a lot of stuff here. DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Sonic Superstars. You can just see an untitled game starting Princess Peach. Some of these are remakes, sure. But you also have third-party companies also coming along. Yeah, you've got a massive list here. I wish there was a way, and it's crazy that this isn't a system, that you could just highlight this and then right click that and it tell you just how many lines you've selected. That's insane. In a spreadsheet, it would tell you. On a website, it doesn't. It literally would just be like a little bit of code. But if I was to estimate, I would say you've got somewhere between 30 and 40 announcements here. So how many announcements did you want to not call it a soft launch? Yes, we know a new console is imminent. Sure, we all know that. Eventually. It's not probably coming out before Christmas. It's probably going to be announced in 2024 for the Christmas season at that point. But meanwhile, you can take it either way. You could say, well, there was a lot of games announced because they're getting rid of all the games that won't be backwards compatible on the new console, or you could take it as they didn't announce enough games because they're holding back games for the next console. You could say either way, and you can't prove either assumption. This Princess Peach game looks like it might be attempting to be a dancing game, weirdly. Princess Peach was shown as the main character in her own game, which will be available in 2024. Stay tuned for more information. Alright, again, I don't dare that. Pushing play. No, I guess it's not a dancing game. It looks like it is an attempt at doing a Paper Mario game with Princess Peach, which that's fine. Maybe the idea here is that they have gone one route with Princess Peach in that the Paper Mario series will be the simplified RPG, baby's RPG. Again, perhaps trying to eat away at Pokemon to say, hey, look, Pokemon has not done so well. Let's make a baby's first RPG that isn't a monster collector as much. And then that will be the Princess Peach game. And then the Mario RPG game will be the game that is the more complicated RPG, trying to perhaps eat some sales away from Final Fantasy, particularly since Final Fantasy 16 is not really lined up to be an amazing seller. There is obviously a dance attack here of some sort, a dance move. And she's holding her dress, and this guy has a bow tie. Some ballroom dancing stuff, which, if anything, I think that pushes Princess Peach to be more of a princess and less of a badass action hero who really doesn't need Mario, which was one of the complaints against her characterization in the Mario movie. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if this game is going to very much try to reestablish Princess Peach to be the more, for lack of a non-sexist term, ladylike princess, feminine or stereotypical feminine, because almost certainly that is what the Japanese people think of when they think of Princess Peach. They think of her as being more of a nurturing princess who sits back and makes wise decisions and does things like ballroom dancing and gets kidnapped and is the damsel in distress, things like that. They've never really had Princess Peach in any of the games depicted as being competent as far as saving herself or in any ways fighting, other than I guess the Smash Brothers games. And so they may very well try to reestablish her as a character, because they really haven't done much characterization around Princess Peach in the first place. It'll be interesting to see if like the Japanese audience loves a more feminine, ladylike Princess Peach characterization, whereas the Western audience goes, oh, you've disenfranchised or disempowered her into the terrible character. I wouldn't be surprised if it is very similar to that Metroid game, where once they actually started giving a voice to Samus Aran and gave her a personality, they gave her a very submissive, feminine personality, more than you would have expected. Because let's face it, there's a lot of sexism, particularly amongst old Japanese men, and they are the people making Nintendo games. So, and there's just a different way at which even the feminists in Japan think and act, and how they really see a feminist hero or a female protagonist should be depicted. Yeah, and there will be almost certainly some cultural clash there. Moving on, a new WarioWare game will be released. Obviously, this is going to be around moving a lot, moving the Joy-Cons a lot. And like all WarioWare games, it looks like it's going to be pretty weird. Looks like it might have some Mario Party elements to it, which is an interesting thought, that of all the Mario things we got announced, we didn't have any Mario Party announcements or any Mario Kart announcements or Mario Sports announcements. Super Mario Bros. Wonder is seemingly skipping a couple of the characters from New Super Mario Bros. U. Looks like there might be a new character here, a new transformation here. You have a yellow toad. Here you have Yoshi here. You still have purple coins of different shapes being collected, it looks like. I think one of the things they're going to play with around this idea is a world that changes more. Like you'll get these wonder mushrooms and then the whole world will start shifting and changing. Yeah. It's still probably, looking just at this heads-up display though, it's very similar to where they've gone, where gold coins basically mean nothing and the purple coins now actually are important. And you have a number of lives, which I don't even know why they bother with that, and then you seemingly hold items in an inventory to activate later. This is one of the problems, I think, with the Joy-Cons in particular, is that even when they want to make what should be a very easy to make game, like a Mario game, there's really not enough buttons. So you have like an A button to activate a coin, so how are you jumping? Yeah, that's a question to ask, certainly. Yeah. So here's where you eat one of these wonder shrooms and then everything gets a little trippy. You have water shooting out of the pipes, and then the pipes are snaking and crawling along the ground, giving you a place where you can jump up and reach higher things. Which honestly, that's not that different from some of the events in New Super Mario Bros. Wii U. Which I guess that would be the most recent equivalent to this, although maybe not. Then you have these big purple hippopotamus balls. And then you have a Mario in shadow that is all stretched out. This whole definitely feels like this is Mario going on an extra special mushroom trip. And at some point you, I guess, turn into this rock-like creature and start rolling. And then at some point you're riding on top of these things and they're breaking the flagpole. Found a wonder seed. You have an overworld map. You can play as one of 4 characters: Princess Peach, Daisy, Luigi, Mario, and I guess Toad, so maybe that's 5 characters. You might have something new here in a fire dress for Princess Peach. Noticeably, I don't think you're going to run into anything like the crown that would turn Toadette into Princess Peach or anything like that. Here we see some Yoshis, 4 different Yoshis. Seems like it might even be 4-player co-op. So yeah, overall that looks just like a 2D Mario game, which at a certain level, yeah, they have to keep on making those, I would think. Let's see. ESA put out something here, but I don't think I even want to talk about it, so let's move on. Square Enix is re-releasing Chocobo GP without microtransactions. Square Enix suddenly gives the 2022 kart racer a second life by making it into a standard game without any free-to-play frills. The question certainly now is, what are they charging for that? Because you can't really have it free, can you? Can you really just give up on a game and say, well, yeah. If it's a $60 game, that might still be too much. It's the right direction, and I hope other game developers learn from this lesson and stop putting microtransactions in games, particularly ones targeted to kids, but I seriously doubt that this is going to financially benefit Square Enix. Yeah, it's going to be $50. Just to play it, and I kind of hope to see that it does have some decent sales, so people would learn to not put live service nonsense in games. Like, live services really only work for the top 2 or 3 games out there, and that's about it. Everything else is just desperately trying to find whales to keep them in business. Let's see, the new Pokemon Scarlet and Violet expansion trailer was released. Check that out on Video Games Chronicle if you want to. GameDeveloper.com says that Jaeger's Dead Island 2 was waylaid by uncertainty and the Unreal Engine 4. This is to say that the company Jaeger, who was working on Dead Island 2 until they weren't, is saying they weren't given enough chance to actually finish the project. I don't know what specifically would have made Unreal Engine 4 be involved, though. Let's see. Amazon Prime is adding 4 extra quote-unquote free weekly games starting today with Prey. So check that out if you're interested. Let's see, is this another cosplayer? I need to hurry up. Yeah, we are getting... We have Eula, E-U-L-A, Genshin Impact character. This is more of a lewd outfit, and again, fairly simplistic outfit. Makeup and hair is nice. I don't know the character though. I don't know if they have tattoos on their arms, probably not. But then you just have kind of a generic outfit overall. And then you just have a lot of thighs being shown. Yeah, I am definitely scraping the bottom of the barrel as far as cosplay on Twitter these days. Just not seeing more than 2 or 3 every couple days. Where I feel like there should be slightly more than that. Although inherently there aren't any events happening. When you don't have E3 happening, and you're not going to then have people going to E3 and cosplaying there, even though there wasn't a lot of cosplay happening anyways there. So you have to kind of wait till Comic-Con, which you won't see very many video game cosplays at Comic-Con, or PAX East, PAX West, something like that. Tokyo Game Show will have a lot of cosplay around it, but very little of that gets reported in the West. At a certain level, cosplay is an extremely wasteful hobby, but heck, if it makes people happy, that's pretty much every hobby. But so I'm not going to really throw aspersions against cosplayers. Apparently Dota 2 is pulled back on the Battle Pass model to free up dev resources. This is GameDeveloper.com if you want to read that. And EA is restructuring into 2 organizations. EA Entertainment, which houses owned and licensed IP, and EA Sports. Which maybe that means we'll actually start to see EA do something as far as making new games that aren't just sports games. but it probably means not much of anything. It's also worth mentioning that in March they announced they were planning to cut 6% of their workforce. EA is still very likely to be the worst. Regardless if they get a new logo and change things visually. Like, I think the people in charge are still going to be the people in charge of at least one of them. I could see potentially dumping all the dead weight at EA on EA Sports and then freeing up another company called EA to actually make games. But because you've split the two companies out, if all the profits you're getting for the next 4 to 6 years are coming from EA Sports, and then EA Entertainment is trying to develop new first-party AAA games, well, they won't have anything to put out to make any money, so I could see EA Entertainment getting their budget slashed, or just not getting the money from EA Sports, not getting funded in any other way. We very rarely have seen actual splits of video game companies. It almost always is a situation where the person in charge doesn't care about the company the second it doesn't make enough profit for them, the massive amount of profits that they are expecting, and at that point they usually just shut the whole thing down and then sell off the components and the licensed intellectual properties to other companies, or they get acquired. Let's see. Apparently Rhapsody Marvel Kingdom Chronicles has a preview and hands-on impression. This is a different website, rpgfan.com. Well, I don't know what I clicked on to get to this website, but yeah. This is the Rhapsody trilogy of games that I think are coming out. A gaming website focused on RPG and related genres such as graphic adventures, visual novels, and roguelikes. We cover franchises, creators, fandoms, and everything in between. Suppose if I was a bigger fan of RPG games, I might consider following this website, but I'm not, so I won't. Ubisoft has said that it should have held Mario & Rabbids sequel for Nintendo's next console. It underperformed because it was released too early, according to the CEO Yves Guillemot. Which he also says in this somewhere that Nintendo specifically suggested. So here you have the quote. Nintendo brackets has advised that it is better to do one iteration on each machine. We were a bit too early. We should have waited for brackets the next console. Honestly though, if you're getting a quote and you're having to add brackets here and brackets there, that's a bad quote to try even to use it. Nintendo, it's better to do one thing. This almost feels like this is a quote where somebody was interviewing them and the interviewer was so incredibly poor that he was interrupting the person they were interviewing. Yeah. Otherwise, this just comes off as potentially sounding like a dishonest quote. Man. Definitely feel like I'm losing steam today. Yeah, and that's what I felt like. The good news is I don't feel like I'm just sick. I just feel like mentally I'm not quite there. Let's see. Video Games Chronicle says Pikmin 4 will seemingly be Nintendo's second Unreal Engine title. Download card spotted in Japan show the Unreal Engine logo. What would have been the first Unreal Engine game? Yoshi's Crafted World. I definitely think even Nintendo will start to use the Unreal Engine at least half the time. It just makes a lot of sense as far as where everybody is going, that a large amount of people are using the Unreal Engine. And everything wants to reload. Here we have Black Orchid from Killer Instinct as a cosplay. And in this case, you're in this weird situation where Black Orchid from Killer Instinct is such an old character that there really couldn't have been that much detail in the costume or the character. So this is basically a perfect presentation of what Black Orchid looked like. She was in this latex green outfit, and she did have these what are these, baton sticks, whatever, fighting sticks. So yeah, as far as the costume, I think that's probably right. It's been so long since I've seen Black Orchid as a character. I don't know if the hair is particularly correct. And I could certainly complain about this like generic rug. This looks like an office rug that you really wouldn't want to shoot on, or just a generic Japanese background. That's not particularly what I think of as far as Killer Instinct either, but yeah, as far as the actual costume, fine. Poses, I'd say, are a little weird. You don't very rarely get a pose of somebody just sitting on their knees or at this weird angle. It's almost like the camera could not be brought up higher, or the background was too low, or something like that. Because this is just like a weird angle, certainly, for both. Black Orchid, known as being very flexible with high kicks as a character, so a pose like that would have maybe made a little bit more sense. I don't know how many people, though, are even that interested in Killer Instinct at the moment for it to justify being cosplayed. And then we have a Video Games Chronicles article here saying Jeff Keighley has acknowledged that the Summer Game Fest diversity criticism around the amount of diversity at the Summer Games Fest. This month's showcase featured no women on stage at all. I think in particular, Jeff Keighley's presentation, that's actually called Summer Games Fest, was lackluster in people overall. Jeff Keighley really does not need to be on stage. He's not that good of a presenter. It would make a lot of sense to have at least one co-presenter. If we were to try and break it down fully, I don't know how many different minority groups you could really list were not on stage, because there was just so few people on stage in the first place. But yeah, overall, my complaint around the Summer Games Fest is that they aren't bringing people on stage to talk about their games, and they really should. At the very least, Jeff Keighley could push the blame on other people if he told the developers of the 20 or so games that were announced at the Summer Games Fest to have a presenter come on stage and talk about the game, and then each one of those game companies, in a very sexist way, just picked a bunch of white males to present, because then he could say, I had no criteria as far as who was going to speak. We asked the game developers to come out and talk about their games, and they talked about the games. That saves him this criticism, which is, I think, somewhat fair. Of course, the problem here is that Jeff Keighley may very well just fall into tokenism, and there may just be a token female presenter, or a token Asian presenter, or a token black guy presenter at the next show. Meanwhile, the vast majority of employees in the game industry will not change. So it still will be mostly white males getting paid and making games. And if they fall in the token presenters, it's still going to just be a long collection of trailers with nothing substantial being said. I've completely forgotten everything, every single trailer, everything that's said. I said this was going to happen too when the Summer Game Fest happened. I said, give me a week or two, and I'll have completely forgotten everything that was shown and said. And I imagine that's the case for most people, because you can't get hyped about a game that just has a 2-minute trailer and says nothing about it and is in the mash of hundreds of other games and trailers. And you can even see Steam encouraging that with their Summer Next Fest happening just like a week later. Alright. Yeah, we don't need to talk about EA's restructuring plans again. Okay. So I'm going to try and burn through the news fairly quickly today. I don't feel like, particularly with the Video Games Chronicle articles, my macro is really working, so we may miss some stuff. Metal Gear Solid Master Collection coming to Switch in October. Super Mario Bros. Wonderland we talked about. Vampire Survivors coming to the Switch this summer. Gallery releases 33 Super Mario Bros. Wonderland or Wonder screenshots. It's not Wonderland, it's Wonder. WarioWare game will be released this year. Princess Peach. 27 screenshots of Super Mario RPG Maker. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Wave 5 has been revealed. Check that out at Video Games Chronicles. Notice that my auto blur, which I implemented in the last stream, is not enabled right now. So I am capable of just burning through all of this really fast. Pikmin 1 and 2. Yeah, 1 plus 2 HD remasters. I kind of do want that, but then that really would just encourage me to play a lot of Pikmin before getting around to playing Pikmin 4. Because, like, if you buy Pikmin 1 and 2, you kind of have to speed run and rush the game, which you're not really encouraged to do that. You really want a 100% Pikmin 1 and 2. And then once you speed run and rush the game, you have to play Pikmin 3 and kind of rush through that. It's going to be a lot of Pikmin, playing potentially 4 Pikmin games in a 12-month period. It is a physical edition. There was definitely some concern that the RPG remake would not be a physical edition and would be a digital download only. I think they have said there will be a physical edition. Star Ocean, the Second Story remake, is confirmed following last week's leak. Arkham Trilogy we talked about. Price rising in other countries we talked about. Even if the price did go up for the Xbox Series X, it really probably wouldn't go up. There'd just be too many bundles that would keep the price just about the same. People would make, like, stores would say, we'll give you a free disc that's worth $60 and then we'll raise the price $60, that type of thing. And there's probably more than enough, like, semi-broken recertified Xbox Series X's out there that you could roll the dice on that, although I don't know if I really would want to roll the dice on an Xbox Series X that's used. Moving on, Sega will stream a Sonic Central presentation on Friday. So tomorrow we'll have even more new announcements. Hopefully I will be able to stream on Friday, but their sickness does seem to come in waves and is taking longer to heal from than I would like. Sonic Mania's developer revealed a 3D platformer called Penny's Big Breakaway. So instead of working with the new Sonic Generations remake game, he is now making a completely disconnected game from. It'll be published by Private Division. This is about the first trailer I could probably press play on. So let's see what this looks like. Looks like the guy has a yo-yo attack. Definitely feels like it's a 3D platforming game. And something that's more of a always going to be on the run game. It might very well be too challenging if they're not careful, because it does kind of have this feel that this should be for little kids, but all this platforming feels like it could be a lot more of a challenge. And generally I would say games need falling action, and this just does not feel like a game that's ever going to have any falling action. Maybe the trailer's just cut that way. But yeah, to constantly run, constantly chase does have that Sonic feel to it. And that's kind of the problem with Sonic games, though, is that you don't ever slow down or ever stop. Let's see, let's look at this third page and see. War Inspector's Other Side receives fresh investments. It says will greatly enhance its growth. I don't know what Other Side is. Square Enix staff have been asking the Final Fantasy head for a Final Fantasy VI remake. The Tower of London will display a Final Fantasy XVI sword in the Royal Armories. Nike and Fortnite collaboration. One of the problems I think that you run into is that, yeah, that looks like all stuff we've talked about before. The Super Mario Wonder feels too much like Wonderland, Balan Wonderland, so they're taking a fairly big risk that people aren't going to think that Balan Wonderworld or Wonderland are somehow connected, or that it's connected to Alice in Wonderland, which it almost would make sense if it was connected to Alice in Wonderland. It's actually a little surprising that we don't have Mario in Wonderland or any of the other classic tales or fairy tale creatures. Nintendo has not tried to touch upon any of the fairy tale Disney characters, when it would have made a lot of sense to try to do that in the NES era, and it would make a lot of sense to do it now even. So Other Side receives fresh investment. The studio suffered a troubled few years, including the seeming cancellation of System Shock 3. So we have never gotten a real confirmation whether System Shock 3 is still in development. And honestly, I assume as long as Warren Spector, who is a big enough name to get more investment, probably always. So as long as he can keep getting money, I think he'll never officially cancel System Shock 3. Let's see. Here you go. Square Enix staff have been asking the Final Fantasy head for a Final Fantasy 16 remake, but Yoshinori Kitase says it would be difficult, which in Japanese that means F off, and he's not thinking about it until 7 is done. Like, that would be difficult is definitely the equivalent of F no in Japanese. So it's not happening. Just take it as that. Not as long as Yoshinori Kitase is in charge, and even if he was replaced or retired, then out of respect for him and his decisions, it still probably wouldn't happen regardless of who the new person was in charge. Which is kind of the crumbling situation with Japanese companies, is that they cannot pivot or change their decisions because their Japanese mentality of honoring the previous person's in charge's feelings and opinions stops them from changing. It's a very slow change, and that's not just Japanese companies, that's just Japanese society overall. And I can kind of see why. They had a very massively large change about 100 years ago when the emperor just told them to embrace Western clothing and Western ideologies and Western everything, which at that time would have been British colonialism effectively. And so I don't think they're that willing to make a big changes again. The Tower of London displaying a Final Fantasy 16 in its royal armories. I assume the Tower of London literally would accept any sword from anybody if it looked good enough. It weirdly, though, does seem like this is an advertisement. It'd be one thing if it was just a sword on display, but you've got this giant poster also happening here. Of course, that might be a just geopolitical thing. Say, hey, we'll make better relations between Britain and Japan. Not that they're particularly terrible even now, by accepting this. Also, I imagine the Tower of London maybe gets some more fans to go to their tourist trap effectively and look at it. Batten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD remasters release dates have been confirmed. They will be coming out September 14th. I assume Batten Kaitos is an RPG game. Nike and Fortnite collaboration teases the ultimate sneaker hunt. So something is going to happen there. Star Wars Jedi Survivor's new patch includes a fix for bounty hunter progression. Okay. EA's Magic first-person shooter Immortals of Avium has been delayed by 1 month. I mean, literally this game was like announced 2 or 3 months ago. Was the first announcement. So why do the delay thing? A new Xbox Indie Game Showcase and demo event is coming in July. Let's see, July 11th? So yeah, you really don't even have time to catch your breath before Xbox indie games are going to start getting promoted. If anything, it feels like the Summer Game Fest E3 time slot is specifically designed to just force the players to get hyped about a game and then immediately forget it for games that actually will be released by Christmas that year, which is mostly the indie games and things that wouldn't have been announced during the Summer Games Fest that year. We already talked about EA's restructuring. The player lawsuit against Microsoft's Activision bid. This was the one where the lawyer claims the redacted email presents uncontroverted evidence. This was that email between, let's see. Between Matt Booty and another employee. Yeah, this email, though, probably means basically nothing, and this lawsuit in particular is already failed once because they failed to just state a claim or show any evidence, and so now they're bringing out this this email as their evidence, which arguably you need a lot more than one piece of evidence to go against a big corporation and lots of lawyers. So yeah, this really isn't the lawsuit to follow. This is not the FTC lawsuit, and so it's important to not merge those two things in your mind. Seemingly the FTC does not have this email, or is not using it for one reason or another. The biggest thing that makes it really unbelievable is that supposedly the email shows that the Xbox exec was saying that the plan around buying Activision is to put PlayStation out of business, which that probably is just a bunch of bravado and nonsense, Tom, because you're not going to put PlayStation out of business just by acquiring Activision Blizzard. It's just not going to happen. You would have to acquire Activision Blizzard, EA, and Ubisoft, I would say, before you could even start to have enough of a monopoly to put PlayStation out of business. And Microsoft really wouldn't want to put them out of business completely. They'd want to keep them around as the smaller competitor. But yeah, the idea that you could just single-handedly in one fell swoop defeat and destroy PlayStation is ridiculous. If you really wanted to do it that way, you would get Sony of Japan just to shut down Sony Interactive Entertainment, which that very possibly could happen depending on how Sony of Japan feels at any one point. And honestly, if I was Microsoft, I would be smoozing Sony of Japan like crazy. I would be having meetings, taking them out for drinks, and I would be saying, hey, let's just save you the effort of making hardware, and you can just be the licensee software publisher of all the games you have. That way you don't have to work and you don't have to pay people to make hardware. Let's see, Nintendo shows off an Everybody 123 Switch's 100-player party games. Which, yeah, how many people, seriously, are going to have 100 people playing party games, even if it's online? That's just way too big of a number. Even that game that announced it had like 33 players at the same time. That's just a ridiculously high amount of people to expect to ever be in one game. And inherently it means that any individual player is probably only going to be 1/100th of an important person in the player. They're not going to be the VIP. I don't think players like those odds. I don't think players like it when you're on a team of 6 or 7 people. If you can get the numbers down to 4, that's about what players are looking for. And then the screenshot with this guy in a horse head costume is ridiculous and means absolutely nothing to me. Forza Horizon 5 is getting 2 Barbie movie cars, one of which I assume is this pink Barbie car that would be a replica of the actual Barbie car that was sold, whereas this other one does not look like a Barbie car at all. But maybe that's the twist in the movie. Nope. The Barbie Corvette and the Barbie Hummer. seem to be the two Barbie cards, and then this K10 customized car seems to be. I bet that's the KT customized, but maybe not. If I actually click on this, yeah, it doesn't go any bigger. So yeah, the K10 customized 1972 Chevrolet is the Barbie car, and then the Hummer GMC here. I wouldn't be surprised if that's what the Ken character, or whatever the male character's name is. Wouldn't be surprised if that's his car. Roblox is starting to allow 17 plus rated experiences with violence, blood, and crude humor. That's weird. So Roblox, I guess, has felt that they've saturated enough that the custom created experiences built in Roblox now need to be sold to an older age range, although it is also possible that Roblox has been around for long enough that people who are 16 or 15 have aged into the 17 plus age rating. Yeah, Amazon giving away the free games. Yeah, Amazon's trying to promote its Prime Day, but honestly, I just don't feel like that matters. Like, I just don't think anybody's going to renew Prime specifically to just because they're getting 4 more free games on this service and the launcher nobody uses. Let's see. Long-awaited sequel in Detective Pikachu 2. I don't know if there were ever any real promises that there would be a Detective Pikachu 2, however. Let's see. Super Mario RPG is coming this November, November 17th. Yeah, it really is just ridiculous for them to say that that was a soft announcement when you start to look at it and you're like, you have the Metroid Prime trilogy, which they didn't mention. I assume that's either out or is coming out. I think it's already out. You have Mario RPG, which would take a lot of time to play. You have Pikmin 1, 2, which would take a long time. You have the Luigi's New Moon remake. Maybe that's coming out this year. I mean, for Nintendo, it's going to be a busy back half of 2023 if you wanted to play all those games. And I kind of want to play all those games. In fact, this is potentially getting to the point where I actually will start buying Switch games and justify owning a Switch. Now I just need to figure out what would be the best way to purchase that. Maybe during Prime Day if you bought some GameStop gift cards and then bought it from GameStop. Yeah. Maybe that's the best way to do it if you can get any discount that way. That might work. For me particularly, if you have a Prime store card and you're getting 5% off the gift cards, which maybe you aren't, maybe you are, probably aren't. Then you go to GameStop and then you have the GameStop Power Pro reward set up and use the gift cards on that, and maybe that applies. Well, the GameStop Power Pro in particular that I've had has been giving me like $5 discounts every month, and I have not used any of them at all. Maybe once or twice out of 12 months. So I could just wait 1 month and at least get $5 off of each of those games. New Pokemon Scarlet and Violet expansion trailer released. Now, on this game, Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon Remaster, I don't know what this game is. I don't know if this is the original game remastered for the 3DS being remastered again, or if this is a sequel. Yeah. And at a certain point, I know that there's already a Luigi's Mansion game. So maybe it doesn't really matter. Maybe I should just go with Dark Moon. And then go with the new game. And that should be good enough. Yeah, this doesn't particularly feel like this was the original game. And I guess what we could do here is just do some research. I need to get a plugin that just goes straight to the Wikipedia. Although this isn't actually Wikipedia that I just clicked on. Luigi's Mansion, known as Luigi's Mansion 2 in European language, is a 3DS game released as a sequel to the Nintendo GameCube title Luigi's Mansion. It's the third game to feature Luigi as the main character while Mario is playing a supporting role. The first two being Mario is Missing and Luigi's Mansion. An arcade version of the game was released in 2015. Alright, so I guess the question to ask here is Luigi's Mansion's releases. Does this have different releases? Came out in GameCube, Cube in 2001. Luigi's Mansion 3 is for the Switch. See, that's the weirdness here, is that is Luigi's Mansion actually available on the Switch? And if it was, Player's Choice release. Guess we'll just have to search again. Real Wikipedia. Okay. Oh man, I'm losing momentum again. A remake of Luigi's Mansion for the 3DS, co-developed by Nintendo and Grezzo, was released in 2018. So, I don't get this. Why would you remake the second game and not remake the third game if they're both 3DS games? Yeah. Well, as far as I can tell, there's no Luigi's Mansion 1 on the Switch. So you're just retroactively going backwards instead of going forwards. Which I guess that will save me some money, because I really don't see a reason why I would want to play Dark Moon, then at some point expect them to release the original Luigi's Mansion. It definitely feels like they are sequels. Maybe there is something specific about Luigi's Mansion that makes it not as playable. It does seem like there's only like 4 areas, but that doesn't really mean anything. Moving on, a Pikmin 4 demo will be available next week. Players can try the game ahead of its release in July. So yeah, again, I'm not even sure you would be able to really buy Pikmin 1 plus 2 and play it, and then play Pikmin 3, and then play Pikmin 4. Definitely seems like they are releasing things out of a very crazy order. Alright, well, I know, speaking out of order, that all my news, my macro is messed up again, so I'm going to have to jump around a little bit here to get to the Gematsu articles before we start looking at games that came out on Steam, if we even make it that far. I don't know if we're really going to make it that far. It's going to be a faster experience, certainly, if we do get that far. Let's see. There's a rumor, according to Gematsu, that Shin Megami Tensei 5 Complete Edition has been announced. An announcement has been teased by a notable Chinese leaker, which I guess that's somewhat believable, in that there very possibly would be a reason to bundle up all the DLC around Shin Megami Tensei. I think there was DLC around it. Otherwise, I don't know what the complete edition really would include. Baten Kaitos 1 and 2 HD Remaster launches September 14th. We'd already talked about that, but we have some different screenshots so we can at least get a general idea what it looks like. Although I'd say that's a still fairly general idea. Tower of Fantasy for the PS4 and 5 launches August 18th. This is a free-to-play open-world RPG game. It feels like a game that already exists on mobile, but I guess that's not really the case. Eterna Noctis DLC Virtuoso has been announced. I don't know what Eterna Noctis is, but we can check it out on Steam, assuming it wants to load. It's almost like the computer can hear me. It's kind of crazy. The computer doesn't hear you and listen to you. So, turn in Noctis. Concert of Night. Is that the new DLC that's coming? This is a Metroidvania game that made it to my wish list. I guess I don't have a reason to really take it off. Nope, that is not the new DLC. So, I guess if I can't get to the DLC, then I'm not going to make a short around it. Eterna Universe Cyberpunk adventure game Eden Genesis has been announced for consoles and PC, and that looks in no way like related to Eterna Noctis. This is Eternium, so okay. This is one of those presentations that's like 10 minutes long, and they're linking to the few seconds of a teaser, which is not enough there to really know anything about yet. Xbox Game Pass adds several games here. You can check out Gamatsu if you're interested. What's this game? Hmm. Hmm. What is this game? It's not Bookwalker. It's not Bramble. Sword and Fairy Together Forever. Yeah, that's what it looks like. Sword and Fairy, the Chinese long-running Chinese game series that is of some level of quality. Which, if anything, that may be the first big Chinese game ever released on Xbox Game Pass. Solstice is now available for the PC alongside free content update. The update adds a new playable form of Briar and new training area. This was an interesting screenshot. You have this like ghost behind you. But that's pretty much all I know. This whole game, Solstice, apparently has been out for a while, like since September of 2022, and I just totally missed it. So I'll make a YouTube short around that. Obviously, when I feel better, I'll do that. I talked about all the announcements on the Nintendo Direct, so there's no reason to mention that again. Let's see. The Metaphor ReFantasio director, character designer, and composer discuss Atlus's large-scale fantasy RPG. This is obviously just a long video of discussions, which maybe that's the reason why the Summer Game Fest doesn't have a lot of people coming up talking about their game, is because when people do want to talk about their game, they tend to want to control how long they can talk and want to talk for a longer amount of time, whereas the Summer Game Fest would necessitate that people come out and say maybe 5 minutes at most worth of information. This is 15 minutes from this one group of people for this one game. That wouldn't make a lot of sense during Summer Games Fest if you have that many games to talk about. NASCAR Arcade Rush has been announced for consoles and PC. Which, yeah. It feels like there may be real competition growing now between Hot Wheels and other racing game creators and NASCAR as a brand. Which at a certain level, NASCAR is in this weird situation where they kind of don't want to keep the audience they have. Like the actual NASCAR fans out there kind of hating on some of the drivers and the people in charge of NASCAR, saying a lot of nasty things sometimes. So in a lot of ways, NASCAR is teasing with the idea of trying to go a little bit more woke without going broke, to quote the overused rhyme. Which, remember, if something rhymes, that doesn't mean it's true, even though humans tend to believe something more likely is true if it does rhyme. Immortals of Avium has been delayed to August 22nd. But yeah, I could, even if it wasn't that situation with NASCAR needs to really do something to have a new generation of people actually care about NASCAR, because kids these days are not going to really care about cars, like in general, or cars even going fast, because they have video games where vehicles go a lot faster, and they're very likely to have automated cars by the time they grow up, and they'll never need to drive themselves. Moving on, ID at Xbox Showcase is set for July 11th. Everybody 1-2 Switch debut trailer and details or screenshots are available. Which, yeah, this is another example of Gamatsu just having better collections of screenshots just by reprinting and reposting the entire press packets. It is ridiculous that not everybody does that. Video Games Chronicles and GameDeveloper.com not bothering to use all the press material. Octopath Traveler 5th Anniversary official live stream is set for July 13th. I wouldn't be surprised if we get some new announcement for an Octopath Traveler 3 or 2. Let's see. Both Octopath Traveler 1 and 2. Although I also wouldn't be surprised if they just try to go in a different direction. And I suppose when you have overwhelmingly positive things here, there's no justification on keeping Octopath Traveler on the fall list. I guess I had Octopath Traveler on the fall list just in case I ever buy Octopath Traveler 1 and actually played it and liked it. Odds are kind of low, though, that I would play any one of them. The Famitsu review scores for issue 1803 gives a game called 9 RIP 32 out of 40. I have no idea what that even is. Plague Tale Requiem for the PS5, 32 out of 40. Evil Dead the game for the PS5 and PS4, 30 out of 40. Final Fantasy 16 getting 39 out of 40. Only one person didn't give it a perfect 10. Clear time is 30 to 40 hours for the main story, 70 hours for completeness. Interesting side note. You usually don't get notes in these lists. And then Exatri says 29 out of 40. Okay, so the more fantasy themed Final Fantasy games do seem to have struck a chord in Japan. Which, okay, that's good news. I definitely didn't want to hear that Final Fantasy was bad. It just seemed like it was setting itself up for it to be bad. Apparently 9 RIP is a otome visual novel. So yeah, good news. Final Fantasy 16 well received in Japan. It'll be interesting to see if it's as well received in the West. If that's the case, maybe we will see Final Fantasies shift back to being like Tolkien-esque fantasy games and not sci-fi games, and maybe that'll set a new path to do something interesting. Inspector Gadget Mad Time Party launches September 14th. Physical editions for the PS5, PS4, and Switch. It's also coming to Steam. I'll be interested to see if this is well received in any way. I'd have to assume that there's some Inspector Gadget cartoon that's out around here that is fueling the idea of making an Inspector Gadget game. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of weirdness. Yep. I'll leave it at that. A game called Tree Pang 2 is coming to the PS5 and Xbox Series in 2023. It's a supernatural first-person shooter now available on PC. Interesting. It's interesting that I would have missed this. And it's interesting that it would come to PC first. First-person shooters probably should come to PC first. Tree Pang Squared. Being published by Team 17. There isn't a Tree Pang 1 from the looks of it. In a lot of ways, this feels like let's make a more traditional first-person shooter around some of the ideas of control. I think that might work fairly well. This in particular looks like a game that would be really good for me, as I'm not a super huge fan of the military first person shooters, so getting that sci-fi element to it and potentially bullet time elements to it sounds appealing. That jumped me around though. That was a tab that had been opened elsewhere. Let's see, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, second trailer details and screenshots are available on Gamatsu if you want to check that out. I seriously doubt, though, there's anything you could add to Scarlet and Violet that would just make people want to come back to that game very much. It almost certainly will just be a case that there will be a new Pokemon game announced and it will immediately make people forget about Scarlet and Violet and get them hyped again for the next Pokemon game. Or at least some percentage of people who are still Pokemon fans at that point will get hyped for the new game. A free-to-play cozy MMO called Palia adds a Switch version. It's due out this holiday. Cozy. Yeah, the fact that they can have in the Summer Games Fest an entire segment around cozy games is a big deal, certainly. More attention being given towards the idea of cozy games, towards, I guess, targeting more laid-back female, I would assume, gamers as far as a market. Let's see, Uma Masume Pretty Derby Party Dash has been announced for the PS4, Switch, and PC, due out worldwide in 2024. This is based off of the Horse Girl anime girls. So it's like this weird anime horse girl racing game, I'm sure. Being made by Cygames, of all people. Let's see if there's anything particularly interesting being shown here. Well, it's not just racing, it's a collection of party games. I still feel like you would have to probably be somewhat of a fan of the anime for it to make sense, though. Even if it is a decent collection of party games, it would be very weird to play this game if you have no connection to Horse Girl or anime at all. Persona 5 Tactica pre-orders are now available if you want to jump into the pre-order bandwagon, which it's probably been over a decade now since any game really needed to be pre-ordered. You might not get it on day one if you don't pre-order something, but within the first week or two you'll get a game if you want it. There's no real shortages of physical discs in particular. A game called Fashion Dreamer launches November 2nd in Japan. Western release has not been announced. I assume this is some kind of fashion dress-up game. And this was part of the Nintendo Direct, maybe only the Japanese Nintendo Direct, because nobody mentioned it from Video Games Chronicle. Good Feel announces a 3D action game called Otogi Katsugeki Mameda no Bakaru Oracle Saitaru no Seinen. That's a big mouthful that I probably mispronounced terribly. What kind of actual game is it? It's some kind of action game. Again, not something that they talked about on Video Games Chronicle, so I wonder if the Nintendo Direct in Japanese talked about several games that were not shown in the Western presentation. A game called Myth Force launches this fall for consoles and PC. It's currently in early access on PC. So, guess we'll see what we've done here. This has a weird frame rate animation to it. And if anything, it feels like this is trying to ape some like Netflix or Hulu animated cartoon show, but I don't think there really is a show based on it. Yeah. But I guess maybe this is inspired by like the Cuphead animation catching people's attention. Do a different kind of animation style, which I can appreciate trying a different type of animation style around your game, particularly if you know your game's not going to be that unique in its gameplay mechanics. This has nothing to do with video games, but I'm wondering, with all of the concern around AI generating art and music and things like that, and just generating text, I'm wondering at this moment what happened to autotune, because it probably was 15-20 years ago that people were complaining about autotune ruining the music industry and making it so even a very poor singer could sound like they were a perfect singer by moving their voice files around to make it so it always hits exactly on the beat and sounds perfectly. And yeah, I wonder if in a lot of ways autotune is kind of like a predecessor to something like AI, where you have this tool that's changing reality to make something different. And I guess it's either a case that on one hand autotune was abandoned completely because we're not really hearing people singing with autotune, or autotune was perfected, which is the other option, to the point where everybody is using autotune, which is a possibility certainly. And it may very possibly is the case that every professional singer is using a autotune version 5.0 or higher, whatever the version would be, and it just does it so well that you can't even recognize it. Maybe if we heard an actual singer not using autotune in a professional pop song these days, we wouldn't even think it sounds good. We may have been trained to expect autotune. Gloomhaven is coming to the PS4 and Xbox One and Series and Switch on September 18th. I skipped several stories there since we'd already talked about it. Silent Hope. Yep. This one doesn't really look like anything that would interest me. Dragon Quest Monsters, The Dark Prince. Did we get general depiction of what that looks like? I guess it looks like this. This feels like one of the many Dragon Quest games that was in development, and arguably this feels like it's redundant. Seems like you're playing a different kind of narrative with different characters in possibly the exact same world that exists in other Dragon Quest games. Pikmin 4 demo launches June 28th. One thing I'd like to know about Pikmin 4 is, does it have online co-op? I bet it doesn't. Probably should. That might be one of the things that Unreal Engine 4 would help with too. It may very well be a situation that internally they have determined that the next Nintendo console is going to be designed specifically to run Unreal Engine 4, Unreal Engine 5 games. And so that's going to be your focus. And maybe that's why so many games have been announced for the Switch at this point, is that they are planning on abandoning any development of any other engine that wouldn't be as easily supported. Although it's kind of hard to develop hardware specifically for one game engine. It'd be putting all your eggs in one basket at the very least. Pikmin 1 plus 2 now available. September 22nd. Yeah. Yeah, if this is September 22nd, then to buy it physically, you almost certainly would be buying this after Pikmin 4 is already out. Metal Gear Solid Master Collection Volume 1 launches October 24th for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. So, yeah, I eagerly look forward to a Steam link there. This is a game I imagine a lot of people will buy day one. Vampire Survivors is coming to the Switch on August 17th alongside local 4-player co-op update. This game, with the long title, launches November 16th in Japan. This is, I assume, a party board game. Yep. Fate Samurai Remnant launches September 28th in Japan, and then September 29th worldwide. I assume this is part of the Fate series, but it's the Fate / Samurai series that I'm not really familiar with. So, it does seem to be set in a feudal Japan timeline. And honestly, at this point, I really just have to throw up my hands in frustration as far as the whole Fate series anyways. Just trying to figure it out or figure out if it's worth paying attention to. Let's see. Penny's Big Breakaway announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC, due out in early 2023. I kind of have to assume that this is not a collectathon style game. So, as a platformer, it feels like it is going to be more like a Sonic platformer game where you're constantly running, which that definitely gives you a different experience. Star Ocean: The Second Story announced for the PS4, PS5, Switch, and PC. So, visually, this looks a little bit better than your standard RPG remake from Square Enix. That's about all I can say. WarioWare Move It, November 3rd. Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The Wonderful 101 Remastered DLC, The Wonderful 1 After School Hero, is now available as a standalone game. Which I suppose that's a possibility. Although I don't know if I really would want to promote re-releases or split off releases. Seems a little high too at $10 when it says if you buy the remastered, do you get that for free? Yeah, personally, I guess I don't want this on the follow list. Then I would just kind of assume that Wonderful 101 Remastered itself not the DLC for Wonderful 101 Remastered. Yep. Yeah, this is already on my wish list, and when I buy something on the wish list, I try to buy all the DLC. Yeah, the DLC here is free, so it makes a lot more sense to buy well, this is weird. Buy this for $40. Or you could buy the other one for $10 and then actually it would be a penny more expensive. It is a weird way to list your games, to say the least. Where were we? Sonic Central broadcast has been set for June 23rd. Xbox game prices, Series X and Game Pass going up in some regions. And that brings us to the GameDeveloper.com news, which we probably talked about all the stories. Again, weird that they are claiming it was a softer Nintendo thing. I'd like to really see a list of what the Nintendo Direct last summer was. In comparison, it almost certainly had considerably fewer games talked about, announced. Apparently, the seasoned developer Scavenger Studios has been hit with massive layoffs. The purported layoffs affect much of Scavenger's 45-person staff. I guess you personally have to define what massive is, but I would assume massive means more than 30% of people, so 12, 14 people at least. Honestly, losing even one person with a staff of only 45 could be a major loss anyways. Okay. So, that puts me now in the position where we've got the blur on. I'm trying to figure out if we've got a follow list cleanup here or what. Looks like we've got a follow list cleanup. This game has no relevancy, so it can go. Guardians of Home from this I'll give more time to since it's an early access. This one's not relevant enough, and I don't really feel like I need to skip a Metroidvania or make an exception for a Metroidvania game. March, Guardian of Dynamite, Bomb Protector, I think we can say no to that. Metroidvanias in particular do have this situation where they can look pretty good looking. They may be very generic or just there's too much competition there. Guardian will say no to. Gruta will say no to. Robot looks like a point and click adventure. It's out of early access, so I'll put that on the wish list. Grow your pets. Some of these have only been out for a while, but I think we can say no to this. Grow on the go. May. I'll give that more time. Then you have Groundhog Day, Like Father, Like Son. Was there actually a Groundhog Day sequel movie? Or was this just a weird video game for no real reason? feel like they did make a Groundhog Day movie somewhere around 2019. But I'd almost have to say it's irrelevant now. Like, why in the world, even if I was going to get VR, why in the world would I play a Groundhog Day game? Yeah, that's gotta go. And then Ground Zero, Texas Nuclear Edition, which is mixed reviewed. And I don't think I need to play every ridiculous full motion video shooter. Yep, so I'm going to say no to that too. Okay, so this is the flag that should have been caught by my program to turn on the auto blur. Am I seeing the auto blur work? No. Okay. What probably happened is I went out of order somewhere, and so I've screwed it up. I won't deal with that now. I will just go through all the games. So we'll do the standard blur the second I see something, but particularly right now is the worst time for me to be in charge of that, as my reaction time is probably going to be very low. Buddies in a box. I'm gonna give this a chance. This doesn't look like anything. So we have an adult game here, 2D animation, mommy sensei horny homework. It's, I guess, MILFs, like 2D colorful anime style characters. Mother fetish. $9.59. It looks to me like it is just a visual novel. It says it's full Japanese audio and supports English and Chinese and subtitles. So I guess if that's what you're looking for, it's probably pretty good. 20 scenes for $10 is arguably not that much. Giga Chad Survivors here is also in the adult section. I don't know why, but I'm gonna just assume there's some reason for it, and it looks like garbage anyways. It's $2. Definitely looks like it's more of a meme game or a troll game. Made myself an AI, doesn't look like anything. Merchant's Guide to the Kingdom. This is an MMORPG? No. It says it's it. It's actually a single player game, but it's the narrative is that it's in an MMORPG world. And you're playing as the non-playable character, which is ironic or oxymoronic. Overall, though, it doesn't really look like much, so I'm not going to give it a YouTube short, but I'll give it a follow and see if maybe people somehow like it. Wayward Rose. Looks like it might be something. Again, I guess the question is, should I make a YouTube short around it? I don't want to be too picky, certainly, as far as what I'm making YouTube shorts around. Sakura in Paris, which this has more of a French 2D style to it, with the shadowing and high fashion. It really feels slightly anime inspired. You wouldn't say Sakura as like a Japanese name. Let's see. Romantic comedy, visual novel, Yori dating simulator, play as Sakura Maeda as she travels to Paris, learns about her father, and if everything goes right, falls in love with a woman of her dreams on the way. What would be ironic here is if this supports only English or supports like Chinese only. English and Japanese. Okay, this could be something. Or it could just be a very clever asset flip of a different style of backgrounds and different style of characters. I probably at some point do need to decide whether I'm even going to put the but I'm even going to bother to put visual novels on the fall list. Mutrix here. Some kind of rhythm game. It visually doesn't look that interesting. Although I would say the gimmick of potentially having a giant hologram lady in the background does feel a little Blade Runner-esque. But yeah, overall this just looks exactly like Beat Saber. So I'm gonna say no to that. Hyperix. Doesn't look like anything. Not a Backrooms asset flip low effort game. Tank Hero looks like nothing. Jigsaw puzzles, not worth promoting. Terror Hour. There might be something to this. That doesn't look like anything. That doesn't look like anything. I'm moving, I feel like, really slow today. And often it feels like I am moving really slow. So next we have an adult game called Sex Survivors, which is just obviously a Vampire Survivors game in the adult section. It looks like it is just that Giga Chad Survivors game with a different name on it. Yeah. Little 8-bit pixely characters. It's selling for $2 also. I think from the same developer and publisher. So I'm going to say no to that. Next we have Aaliyah's Carnival Flowering Sky, which looks like more moe or at least kawaii anime styles visual novel. This one doesn't have English support, unfortunately, just Japanese. Even at that though, it's nice to see more Japanese games coming to Steam. And here you have a student at a desk in a school, so maybe that rule against students in school outfits that Valve was somewhat enforcing has gone out the window. Definitely feels like it has gone out the window. Let's see, Sibyal. Just looks like a dark screenshot horror game. I'm gonna say no to that. This doesn't look like anything of interest. Magic Craft. It's a player versus player game in early access. Guess I'll give that a short. Divided Skies. Looks like it might be something, but I wouldn't be surprised also if it is kind of nothing. This one's already on the follow list though, so I feel like I'm gonna say no to making another YouTube short on that. Just assume I already have. I kind of have to make that assumption. Crazy Brain, nope. Cube Escape, nope. Farming Simulator, Down Bass Warriors, Bandit Brawler. We'll give this one a chance. King's Blood. It's probably not my kind of game, but I'll make a YouTube short around it. Nanook, The Dusk of Brutes. It almost seems like this is an old game being ported. Either that or it's just a weird animation style. I guess either way we should probably say yes to it. And boy, does that feel like that's not playing programmed well at all. Usually when I see a game in motion, I'm more likely to say yes to it, but these animations just feel way too rough. So I'm actually going to say no to it. They did a poor job promoting their own product there. Colossal Cave VR, not free, so if you had bought the non-free version of Colossal Cave, then now you would have to double dip. There is a historical reason certainly to play Colossal Cave, probably not in the VR version, but I don't think it got particularly good reception. Colossal Cave, I think, just being too old of a game. Mostly it was a text-based game originally anyway, so Blink God just looks like an asset flip game. What looks like it's a troll joke game. Gemini Binary Conflict. It doesn't look polished enough. Third World Bottom Dimensions. I like this logo. Somebody put a lot of effort into the logo, but screenshots here are not helping it much. I'm gonna say yes to this just because it's so weird, but it may literally just be weird art trying to be sold as a video game. But it is free, so I guess the price is right. Way better to have something that's crazy art than something that's just incredibly unambitious art like this. This is a tower defense game, Times of War. I think we can say no to that. Project Toon Tanks. We can say no to that. Definitely feels like there's a tank game at the moment that is not, that's getting somewhat popular, and that's where we're seeing other tank games come out to try and create some name confusion. My Home / Zombie Center. This is, I feel like there's been 2 or 3 games around this idea too, where you're inside of an IKEA or a large warehouse shopping place and zombies are attacking and you're just picking up weapons and things to throw. Here we can see though, this is a very low effort implementation of that, where they're just asset flipping a lot of things and asset flipping zombie models that don't match with Anime Go models in any way. So we have to say no to that. Honestly, I don't know if you really have a game there in the first place to just be trapped inside of a warehouse or trapped inside of a mall. When you think of some of the zombie games where you are trapped inside of a mall, they tend to have a lot of narrative and bosses and people to save to justify actually playing in those areas. Then we have something called War and Peace, which for the name alone I think I'll give a shot to. And so what I imagine happened there is that I at some point popped up this flag, and that stopped the auto blur from kicking in. I'll have to see what happens next stream. And again, assuming I don't get sick again, I expect I will stream sometime on Friday, and we probably won't have that much new stuff to talk about, but whatever. I will try to play some of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Off screen, but probably won't get very far with it, because if I can't pay attention when I'm streaming, I definitely can't pay attention when I'm not streaming. That's going to be it for this recording though. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. If you want to support me even further, there's some links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.